How long has the jury been out? It's only been a half hour now.
Jarin is our second to oldest, and we kind of knew he was deaf when he was really little. We just watched and he would just not respond accordingly. He had different sounds that he was making than most kids, but he was really smart. So, you turn the music on and he'd dance and stuff. So
yeah, he fooled us for a while.
Yeah, he did. He tried to tell the doctor that we thought he was not hearing us, and so she did a bell in the corner, and of course...
It was an HMO, so you had to go through your primary care to get a referral to the audiologist, who was across the hallway, and she wouldn't do it. So anyway, finally, she gets all three of us in a room, and she sends Jarin to the other side of the room, and she's got a bell in her hand. And she tells him, turn around toward face the door. And then she rings the bell, and he turns around. She goes, oh, he's not deaf.
Yeah.
I'm like, you have a bell in your hand. He wants to know what you're doing. And it took about a half hour, 45 minutes, but then finally she figured it out and wrote it out, and we walked across the hall, and 30 minutes after that, we had an audiologist walk in and say, your son is deaf. But you could tell that he was just frustrated. He was tense. When he couldn't get his point across, he would huff, and he would just give up, which was frustrating for us too, because we didn't want to shut him down. We wanted to understand, but we were also following the instructions of the oral communications teacher, which were saying you don't even use home sign. You just need to get him to speak, and it just wasn't working.
Yeah, ASL's been the best thing for him.
Because he understood that, maybe he couldn't say every single thing that he wanted to say, but we were communicating finally rather than just looking at each other going.
We're pretty close. I mean, we talk about everything. He doesn't talk about the same things to anyone else in our family. Like, we'll be watching TV and he'll want to know what a commercial said, and I'll be like, no, it doesn't matter. And after I talked to him about that, I realized that it's not that he wants to know what the commercial said, it's that he wants to understand what's going on. And I just kind of didn't think about it. I didn't think it was that big a deal. I just thought, oh, my dad will explain it, but it's my job too.
I know that he wants to hear. I know that. He wants to be able to talk with his family, and I know that's really important to him.
Child's born, it's deaf, oh my God. How am I going to communicate with it? It can't hear my voice. Voice to me is my life, my world, it's how I communicate. This child can't communicate to me, so I have to communicate with it. It has to hear my voice, say goodnight, I love you, and so you try to change the child.
The way that the cochlear implant works is basically it's a substitute for the inner ear. The purpose of the cochlear implant is to replace those hair cells. So with an implant, there's a device that's surgically placed with electrodes that are placed in the inner ear. And then the electrodes take the place of the hair cells, so an electrical signal can be sent to the nerve. But the brain is very pliable, and it's able to take that signal and and make use of that information. And a lot of times patients can hear, they describe the sound almost as if it was normal.
Under normal conditions, sound waves travel through the ear canal to the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates small bones in the middle ear. In the cochlea, sound waves travel through fluid, stimulating thousands of hairs on top of hair cells. The hair cells convert the mechanical energy into electrical impulses which stimulate the nerve fibers. They form the acoustic nerve which sends the message to the brain. When hair cells are damaged, severe to profound hearing loss occurs. The cochlear implant serves as a transducer. The implant is placed under the skin behind the ear. Through the external transmitter, sound is transmitted through the skin. The microphone transfers sound to the speech processor, which then transforms the incoming sound and sends it to the hearing nerve. Sound is processed in the brain artificially.
One of the biggest risks would be any injury to the facial nerve when they put the implant in. The area where the implant has to be placed is very close to the facial nerve, and so if that is injured during the insertion of the implant, you can have facial paralysis or numbness or those types of things. And it's not common, probably less than 1% chance that would happen during a surgery, but that is a risk.
The cochlear implant, in my opinion, is making a miraculous opportunity available for many. It's not appropriate for every student or every adult, but for the many that it is, it's, in my opinion, nothing short of a miracle.
This is brain surgery here. You are cutting the skull. It's amazing when you think about how far society is willing to go in order to force speech into the human body. I mean, we're willing to actually invade the outside of the human body. A student at Gallaudet, for example, is walking around with half of his face paralyzed simply because a nerve was severed during the operations.
My view of the cochlear implant is that it is just a tool. It's just a tool. It is not an answer. It is not a cure. I don't think being a deaf person is a condition. I don't see it as being something that is negative. I see it as a way of life.
It's sending this message that, what's wrong with who you are. I mean, basically saying that you are not a full human being, that you're having to add this computer into your mind in order for you to be a better person, So if you feel something's lacking and you're deaf, it sort of sends this cultural message that there's something wrong with the fact of deafness.
I think that many parents want what's best for their children. I think anybody can understand that. I think that many parents want the children to be like them. They want to be similar. And I understand that. But I think a lot of parents know nothing about deaf people.
If a child is deaf, I think that it is a beautiful thing. When I see deaf children signing, communicating, running, playing and telling jokes, for me, that is the most wonderful thing you could see. The true danger, in my opinion, is when a doctor or a parent feels that the cochlear implant is the answer for their child. Often they will go to every length to prevent any access to sign language, to the deaf community, to anything related to deafness.
I mean, there's no advocacy that comes in when you become a deaf parent. It says, okay, look, here's all the options that you have for a deaf child. These are the pros and cons of each one. I mean, nobody does that. You have to research that on your own.
Last year on my internship, he would sit there and talk about being so proud of being deaf. And then this year, he wrote a poem for English, and it's called Silent Night. That poem was probably the first insight that I had into how much he missed being able to hear, how much he wanted to be able to hear what everybody else did. And I was very surprised to find out that he had decided to get a cochlear implant.
And we're just deciding now to get cochlear implants, and we're almost there, a couple days away.
My parents didn't want to do it, like try and get it done too early, because they wanted him to be more involved in it, in the decision and stuff. And so it was kind of both. Just my parents asked him what he thought about it, and we kind of went on from there.
I'm going to give him a very small injection. It's going to feel like a little ant bite on the top of his hand.
Okay.
Okay.
It's all right. You don't have to watch.
No, he doesn't have to watch. He's doing great. We're all done. I just need him to hold very still. Don't move his hand.
Hurt? Just a little bit. You ready?
Okay. I'll give him a little sedation here. This just kind of cools the jets a little bit. You got to give a kiss before you go, though.
Give me love. You'll be fine.
Take good care of this guy.
Okay, Bob.
How do you feel? You getting a little bit tired? No? Okay.
Okay.
Go.
Okay.
They called and said that the implant's in and everything looks good, and they closed it up, and that the recovery, I guess he goes to post-op, and that's going to be like an hour. They're going to call one of us in to go and interpret for him.
Feeling better?
How's your pain, bud? Just a little bit better?
Okay, there we go.
Where you at?
What everything? Everything.
Oh, just everything.
The good things out.
You might not like loud.
I don't know.
Oh, rock on, dude. Okay.
That's because you went golf.
You might have a headache.
Jarin?
Here we go. We gotta go. There we go.
Wait, Minnie and Mouse, do I see? Wait.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's starting to come
Go.
Test.
Yeah.
Did you say hi?
Hi.
Can you hear? Can you hear? Wow, I love you.
Hello.
Oh, that's good.
Right at first, all the sounds seem just about the same, so he can't tell where the sound's coming from, and you can't tell. So that's good, like you're doing, to get his attention and point out where it's coming from. Yeah.
Think it goes weird.
Feels weird.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Amy will help.
Good.
Wow.
There you go. Good.
Hey,
Good.
Jarin.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
The sound comes on as soon as you
And
get
when
the
I
magnet
read
attached again.
You can hear now?
Yeah.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say something.
Good.
Yeah.
Happy boom. Yeah.
Cool. Baby.
Yeah.
Turn on some music.
Loud?
Yeah.
Wow. You ready for music?
After they get the surgery and they have their cochlear implant activated and it's been mapped and everything is going, people tend to think, oh, you've got a cochlear implant. Oh, you can hear. But they don't hear like we do.
When he first put the cochlear implant in, my understanding is a great deal of what he hears, if you and I were to hear it, would sound like white noise to us.
What have you been hearing with the implant?
What have you been hearing with the CI?
How's that have a day?
A lot of things. Well, like,
Tell me some of
explain some. Movies and music. Music is his favorite. Your friends talking. Pre-CI, he was doing, I think, 35%. 35% word recognition at school before CI.
Yeah.
25, 35.
Good about.
25. After CI, he went up to 70.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
That's great.
he is, I mean, it's all been almost immediate. His speech is already almost immediately better.
Boy, that's wonderful.
And I mean, he's doing, and he loves it, he won't take it off.
They're changing my assignment to follow him and work with him. When school starts in a couple of weeks, I'm going to start with the assumption that Jarin's brain does not process that sound at all. And I'll start right from scratch.
I hope it doesn't change him because he's such a fabulous person and such a character and full of life. And I hope that none of that goes away. He's got a lot to learn.
He had his surgery in May.
Yeah.
So it's been May. 4 months. But just the fact that he can be standing where my daughter is and I can say, hey, Jarin, and he turns around. Never been able to do that.
Is there a risk of surgery? Always. Is there a risk of anesthesia? Always. Is there a risk that the implant might not work as well as I want? Yeah. But the chances of greater success are so much higher that I wouldn't hesitate.
There's the idea that you have a hearing child, or a deaf child, pardon me, who they're deaf. They can fit into the deaf culture. They will never be hearing. They will never be able to fit into the culture of the hearing world. It just won't happen. And so when you give that child a cochlear implant, you take away the chance for them to be in the deaf culture by placing them right in the middle, right in between the two worlds so that they don't fit anywhere.
There's a larger psychological development issue that you have to look at, that when you give a child an implant, the implant is one physical piece that goes into the head through this surgery. But what it carries is an immense social message. And what it carries is basically, it puts their life on a course of remediation and this notion that there's something that is wrong with them that needed to have been fixed.
It's great to be deaf. It's not an issue. It just is going to help him in situations to be able to hear sounds.
And I look back on my youth And my identity was a disabled hearing person. And I didn't like that. A lot of the hearing people thought of me as the deaf or hard of hearing. They can't really function. They can't really do those things. So the deaf identity is very different. It's, yeah, we can do anything. We can do anything that hearing people do. We just kind of maybe do it in a different way. And so that's the identity that I really was able to develop because I didn't wear the implant anymore. So as a youth, I think maybe they get a cochlear implant, but what is their identity?